let's get into a little bit of Nerd Pledge. Nerd Pledge, the game that we play with nice people on the internet. They fund this program. They send in numbers. That's what they do. The number means something. It relates to cricket in some way. It's in a currency. They choose the currency. They choose the number. Sometimes they choose a higher number. Sometimes they choose a lower number. Jeremy Brown has chosen a very handsome number. The number is $39.70 in Australian dollars. That means 3970. We can interpret that in any way that we choose, but we've got a clue which is supposed to send me in a certain direction.
All right, thank you, Jeremy. What a great pledge that is. His new number is much more interesting than the intended purpose of his old number and is a homage to one of only two monarchs. He goes on to say, I'm aware of who have, this is the monarchs, held this very difficult position. The relatively recent tragic loss of one has affected me more deeply than I would admit to many people. It doesn't really count as cricket history, though I wish I had been in a position to take more notice of this match when it happened. Jeff.
Yep. Monarchs, Adam. Look, initially on a first read and even later on a subsequent read, I think this has to be Shane Warne related, doesn't it? You're talking about monarchs. You're talking about the king.
Oh, right. Yeah, okay.
And you're talking about a recent tragic loss that affected an Australian man of roughly our generation more deeply than he might admit to many people. So I think, tongue-in-cheek, he might be reading it as a Queen Elizabeth II reference, but we should actually be reading it as a Shane Warne reference. That just seems to ring true. Do you agree?
Yeah. I do now you said that. When I was reading it, I'm like, oh, this might be something to do with when Prince Philip, not that he was the monarch, but I just was thinking about him and the games that he played, which, I mean, it's pretty cool that he's got like a cricket archive page, you know what I mean, that he played in fixtures that were recognised to that extent. Maybe that's one for story time on another day. But yeah, I'm relaxed at you going down the Warnie rabbit hole once more.
A rabbit hole we've been down, but there's always something else to look at. Shane Warne, the king of spin, okay. And so I thought, who's the other monarch? And initially I was hoping to find an Ashley Giles connection, because if we had the king of spin plus the king of Spain, as he was typoed into being when an order of coffee mugs went awry, that would be great. But I couldn't find anything that would necessarily link them through the other part of the clue, which is holding a difficult position. And I suppose you could say probably Shane Warne held quite a few difficult positions across his time, but in terms of formal positions of employment, there's not a lot that jumps out. I suppose he did his bit of coaching in the IPL and so on. But the main thing that I remember is that he was a member of the MCC World Cricket Committee, as in the English MCC, the Marylebone one, not the Melbourne one. And he was on that relatively recently. The World Cricket Committee is an advisory committee at the moment. Kumar Sangakkara heads it with Kumar Dharmasena, the umpire, along with Susie Bates, Claire Connor, Julan Goswami, Heather Knight. They've got 4 women out of, they're like, we need more women on there. So they've got 4 out of 12, which is, it's better than 1 out of 12, which is what it used to be, or none out of 12, which is what it was before that. So Sourav Ganguly is still on there, Ramiz Raja basically if you've been sacked as the head of a cricket board, then you probably get a go on there. Justin Langer's on it at the moment with Owen Morgan, Graham Smith, and Ricky Skerritt, who is a West Indies administrator. So that's the current lot. Sort of back in the day, it started in 2006. I think originally it was Anil Kumble was there with Rahul Dravid, Michael Atherton, Sean Pollock, Steve Waugh, Majid Khan. Like it's heavy hitters, right? On this panel, you've got to have done some significant stuff in the international game. But maybe the first really major thing they did was they intervened in the Pakistan's forfeited test overrule. So there was an ICC board meeting where the ICC board overruled the result that Pakistan had forfeited the test in 2006 when they were accused of ball tampering and refused to come back on the field. And the ICC said, no, it's a draw. We're going to change the records so that it's registered as a draw. And then the Cricket Committee came out and said, well, actually, you can't because we're the MCC and we control the records, and you can't change the result of a match after it's finished. So that was sort of an early pulling of rank, I suppose. They had a lot of influence in signing off on DRS, on getting the decision review system brought in, approving pink balls to use in day-night test cricket, removing the offer of bad light to players and making umpires make those decisions, things like that. So, they've been involved in a lot of the significant decision-making, I suppose. So it was a position that had some importance. Charlotte Edwards was the first woman on the panel in 2012. A lot of big names have been on there: Alistair Cook, Mike Gatting, Barry Richards, Jimmy Adams, the West Indies captain, Michael Vaughan, Rod Marsh. And Shane Warne took Uncle Rod's spot in 2018 when Rod Marsh stepped down. Warne gets on the panel. Another royal. I'm like, could we stretch this and go Sourav Ganguly, the Prince of Kolkata, as he was often known? So you could say there were a couple of royals on there at the same time. Prince Philip, the man who drove his car into a fence, was MCC president twice, which you might say was a more difficult job. Like, I don't know if being on the World Cricket Committee, you could say that it was a really difficult job, but Shane Warne was never the MCC president. Is any of this? I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I like that we're talking about it. I have a lot of respect for what they do. They've been increasingly punchy about topics that are near and dear to us. Jamie Cox, who's been involved in that, in steering it as secretary, as the boss of the MCC, the role that he held for the last couple of years before moving back into the county game. He has been strident in criticising the direction of travel, and that takes some authority. And similarly, Shane Warne, just on him, what I remember him most for from an MCC perspective is actually talking about climate change. A couple of years ago, I can't remember exactly what the MCC were doing in relation to climate change, but it's obviously at some level symbolic. But Shane Warne, who at different points in his life said things about all sorts of topics that were in the political sphere, him coming out and lending his authority to have a conversation about cricket's carbon-intensive nature was not a small thing. It's a wide remit, as you say, an advisory panel, but one that has plenty of clout.
So none of this tied to a match, because Jeremy's clue says, I wish I'd been in a position to take more notice of this match when it happened. And so the only thing I could think of that might link to it in some way is the match where Shane Warne captains the MCC team in 2014. He captains the World 11 team against the MCC in their bicentenary game. If you remember this, they had a 50-over game at Lords, and they got together a couple of bloody good teams, by the way, in this World 11. Gilchrist and Sehwag opening the batting, with Tamim Iqbal, Kevin Peterson, Yuvraj Singh through the middle order, Shahid Afridi and Paul Collingwood as the all-rounders, and then Peter Siddle, Warney, Murali and Tino Best, mind the windows, as the bowling attack. Getting Warne and Murali on one team was awesome just in and of itself. And it's quite a good game from memory, and when I went back to look at it, that stood up. Gilchrist and Sehwag making a few each quickly at the top. Few wickets fall. Yuvraj saves the day for the World 11 with 100. He gets out in the second last over of the game, and I'm sure you'll remember the bit that happens next, which is Warney comes out to bat, first ball, gets a beamer from Brett Lee that smashes into his gloves, breaks his hand, and Kai Bosch is in play. I think he might have been going to play more Big Bash that summer, and he couldn't do it. So he finishes batting. He finishes the innings 3 not out, but he can't bowl, and he's broken a bone in his hand, and doesn't. This is the last sort of semi-serious bit of cricket that he plays, aside from that sort of nonsense USA tour after that.
Yeah, the only thing I remember about this game, you've got a few more details, I'm sure, but this is the game where Andrew Strauss was caught on the hot mic giving a character assessment of Kevin Peterson, which went around virally. I don't remember much more about what happened, but I do remember that.
Yeah, a description that rhymed with 60-metre drop punt. Now, the other fun bit that you would definitely not remember, because why would anybody? Yuvraj is caught off Sachin Tendulkar's bowling for 122 by a substitute fielder who was Matthew Renshaw. in 2014, so years before his Test debut as a young fella. He's out there taking a catch in the deep 49th over of this game off Tendulkar. So caught Renshaw, bowled Tendulkar, not one that I would have imagined ever appeared on a scorecard, even though it doesn't technically because he's the subfielder. Anyway, they make 294, the World 11. They set this for the MCC. Sachin makes 44 in reply. They've got Brian Lara in their team. He makes 23. They've got Rahul Dravid. He makes a golden duck off Paul Collingwood. And they've got Shivnarine Chandapal, so quite a storied batting lineup, 37 not out. But they are entirely reliant on Aaron Finch, who's opening the batting with Tendulkar, and they're lucky they have him. He makes 181 from 145 balls. And he's not out at the end. And they're out of batting after that. They've got Daniel Vettori listed at 6, and then Chris Reid, the keeper, and then Brett Lee, Syed Ajmal, Umar Gul, Sean Tate. So basically one more wicket. They're in strife there, but Aaron Finch takes them through. So what does that have to do with 39-70? Absolutely nothing. Couldn't find anything. There's no link on the cards. I looked at the USA games. There's nothing there. Shane Warne takes 3 for 20 in one of the games when he gets Tendulkar, Laxman and Lara out, which is a good 3, but nothing related to that number. 39.7, I thought laws of the game. Law 39 is the stumping law, so I thought there could be something there that relates to Shane Warne, but it only goes as high as 39.4, which is the bit about being able to be out off a wide and be stumped. An interesting quirk I'd never thought of. If there's one run required to win and you charge out and miss a wide and get stumped, you're not out because the run's already been scored before the bails are taken off. So if it scores level and there's one down the leg side, you can afford to gallop down as far as you want and have a mighty swing at it and try to slog it because you can't get out to it unless you hit it catch to somebody. But yeah, basically, Jeremy, I've got NFI. I've done my best. I've followed the trail that I think seems like the most plausible one, and I've found absolutely nothing, and I'm going to need you to come back to me in the form of further clues.
Last thing before we go to the break, that wasn't a List A game. All those MCC games that had first class status and designation over the years, and List A games. I looked at Shane Warne's profile then. His last List A game was for Hampshire against Gloucestershire in 2007, and you go back through and what that was classified as an other or a miscellaneous match. And surprised by that because I don't know why that wouldn't have. Anyway, Jeff, we have to rather urgently get to a break. On the other side of it, we have lots and lots of cricket from around the world.